Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dynasty Wonderland podcast with me, the Matt Chatter, Ryan MK. And as always, by my side, my buddy. You can find him on Twitter at AARonStew09, the salary captain, the March Heron, Aaron Stewart. What's up, buddy?
Oh, not much, man. As I always say, Mondays are great days for me because,
happy Monday.
Yeah, everyone dreads Mondays, but Monday nights is when I get to get on Zoom, get to get you on Zoom, and we just get to talk fantasy football. It's living the dream, man.
That's right. And we were supposed to have a very special guest tonight. And a little sickness caught the guy. And normally I wouldn't even care to make it a big deal, but we had it out there on Twitter. So if anybody's tuning in expecting anything, just know we will try and get Mr. Anand Nanduri in a future episode. But I have it on good advice that we may get an interview, a quick small interview with him that we'll throw in at the end of the pod. One of those one-on-one with the salary captain specials, if you know what I mean. Like we did with, the Casanova, the fantasy Casanova, Santiago. I love that guy. So shout out to him. And so, yes, we're hoping to get that to throw on at the end of the episode. Right, Mr. Aaron?
Yes, sir. I have sources. Sources have confirmed. Contract details were discussed and exchanged. And I'll be able to, I may be wearing something different, but that's going to be future Aaron. Future Aaron's going to be able to go and get an interview. And then it's going to, maybe right in the middle of this podcast, like I'll change what I'm wearing. And then I go back to just my casual, got my jacket, my hat, long beard. Yeah. Texas heat won't change that for me.
It's funny. I actually thought something like that. And full disclosure, Aaron and I were discussing earlier because we're going to have a little bit of a schedule change, and we're also thinking about doing a little bit of a big pod for like a season preview. So we were thinking about something like that and having multiple guests on for segments at a time, back to back, and would probably end up recording them at different times. So I was just imagining different videos and us in different outfits and whatnot, and so I was kind of thinking along those lines. But anyway, yes, now that I've actually brought it up, just so everyone knows, once the season begins, you're going to get not one but 2 pods a week. That's right. Now, to be honest, we're going to cut down the time on them. So when it comes down to it, you get one of those 2.5 hour Dynasty Wonderland pods, and that's just going to be more split up into 2. So that is the plan. We're going to try and plan something really cool to preview the season, but that's what we got coming up. So no Anand, but we got some news to talk about. And a couple of drafts we're going to talk about. Chop, if that gives you a hint. And so, Aaron, before we just get into the news, do you have anything to add? I feel like I just rambled on there for a minute and took over. So anything from you, my friend?
Man, it is officially draft season. So many slow drafts going on, and it came up so fast. Like this upcoming weekend, I've got my first live draft, and it's like, wow, can't believe it. But I mean, it's felt weird this year because honestly, I've been drafting underdog. I've been doing these slow drafts, been doing mock drafts and Scott Fish Bowls. So heck, I've been drafting since June, which I feel really prepares me for these home leagues. Hey, for any of my home league mates that are listening right now, you're in trouble. Like I've been drafting nonstop every day. Putting money where my mouth is on that.
That's right.
Guess what? And drafting against some really smart dudes. So those teams I absolutely hate. But I know when it comes to those home leagues, you better bring it because I'm bringing my A game. I already know like ADPs. I already know stacking. I know it all. So bring it.
Bring it, he says. And I believe it. I don't really have home leagues per se. We used to do a friends and family league. We didn't do it last year. That was the first year. We actually, I made a trophy for the longest time. I had these little gray foam cutouts that I used. And so everybody that won would get to put their name on a quote unquote plaque and put it right on the trophy. It was great. I was kind of trying to take a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I'm high, but inspiration. There we go. From the Stanley Cup, from Lord Stanley's Cup. So that was the idea behind the little plaque thingies. But yeah, we didn't do it last year. Too much shit's going on. So we might get that going this year, but my drafting is kind of starting to wind down, which is nice. Got the couple of guillotine drafts we might talk about later. And then other than that, I'm in one more best ball slow draft, and that's all I got going on. So mine's fine. I was much busier drafting earlier, it felt like, but now things are kind of, my drafting, it feels like, is starting to wind down. And that's probably crazy to some people who are like, you draft all summer, like we're almost to the season, this is when you should be drafting. But I'm like, I don't do that much redraft stuff, it's mostly Dynasty, and then I do a lot of best ball, and yeah. That's pretty. And then the guillotine leagues.
Right. And the thing is, if you're in this industry like Ryan and I are, it's like drafting in August. That's your casual leagues, and especially if you're drafted in September. And no, the real people, the people that are in this, where you get to have an advantage. You're drafting back in June, July. I've even heard of people doing rookie drafts before they actually go in the NFL. And, I'm not opposed to that. Don't think I can get my home dynasty leagues on board with that. I think They know they would be in a lot of trouble going against me, because I know the guys to target and avoid.
Right. Yeah, it definitely, I could see how that could be an advantage for some of us, but then again, the NFL draft, it can make a different landing spot, can, mean something. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting, conversation. So we move on to the news, Aaron. And we got a bunch of different things going on, some little tidbits, and some other things. We got some big news. So let's go ahead and begin with probably the biggest news, at least thus far, the Josh Allen contract. And I'm sure you'll end up talking a little of this with Anand, but why don't you go ahead, give us your breakdown salary capation.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So on top of talking about it here, I'm going to talk with Anand in the interview that's going to be later in this podcast. I also am working on the Josh Allen transaction implication article as well. That's probably going to be my next one. I actually just had one go live in that series for Aaron Rodgers restructure. And I had to have some fun with the naming of this, because I called it Transaction Implication Josh Allen, the $250 million QB. Had to have my puns in there, but it was a massive contract. So 6-year extension, worth just over $250 million. I want to say it came out to $258 million. There was an interesting little thing in there because I was going through the details, and it's not as complicated as Patrick Mahomes, but there's a lot of details to it. First things first is that he has now set the NFL record for the most guaranteed money at signing. So in particular for these players, that is the most important number.
Right.
Is players just want to get their guaranteed money when they sign their contract. And he got $100 million when he signed. And that is a ton of money.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, it probably should have been higher, because percentage-wise, that came out just under 40% of his contract guaranteed at signing. And yes, $100 million is a ton of money. Just barely beat Dak Prescott, who was around the 95, 96 million. But Dak Prescott's was a 4-year contract. And I looked at the 6 largest contracts signed by quarterbacks, besides Josh Allen, and also omitting Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was ridiculously, like, only 14% was guaranteed at signing, but the other six guys, they averaged about 55% of their contracts guaranteed at signing. So even though he got 100 million, like, it was so below like the market, like what elite quarterbacks usually get guaranteed at signing. And that kind of struck me as odd. And I noticed there is a guarantee. There's an option bonus for 2022. Basically, the way an option bonus works is the team gets a decision. Hey, do you want to pick up Josh Allen's contract for 2022? If yes, you have to pay this bonus, which is worth an absurd $42.4 million. And the other strange thing about that is, well, it's 2021. Next year's 2022. And they have to pick up that bonus. Like, they have to. It's, if they don't, it would cost them $77 million on their salary cap. Like, they're obviously going to pick it up, not just because it's Josh Allen, but financially, it just completely crumbles their entire team's salary cap. But, you know, I was thinking, I was like, well, that's really weird to have this massive $42 million option bonus, and it spreads out over 5 years. So roughly $8 million that he gets from 2022 to 2026. But I was like, why not just make that part of his signing bonus? Like, why like delayed a year on a guaranteed $42 million? And turns out it actually has something to do with the Buffalo Bills salary cap, at least the way that I look at it. In 2022, the Bills don't have a lot of salary cap space. They could have absolutely taken that $42 million, made it part of the signing bonus, spread that $8 million out over the first 5 years of the contract. But the Bills would have $0 in 2022 on their in terms of cap space. So this option bonus actually helps a little bit because Buffalo is clearly trying to compete. They've made the playoffs the past 2 seasons. They went 13-3 and made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. They've got their quarterback, and I mean, as I mentioned, they went to the conference championship game. They want to win. So this option bonus, it allows them to still have salary cap space to go, hey, we need, I don't know, a cornerback. They could at least afford an $8 million cornerback without doing anything like restructuring or anything like that. So I thought that was quite interesting, is that really the $100 million that Josh Allen got guaranteed at signing, it could have easily been close to $150 million.
Right.
Like, it's massive, which is why, like, I started to run some numbers. Lamar Jackson's contract, when he's going to be the next big extension. I mean, maybe Baker Mayfield, but Mayfield's not going to be like in the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. He's not. And Spotrac actually has a calculated market value for players. And if you go to Lamar Jackson, interesting thing is they calculate his average salary to be $44.5 million. So I did some math. I ran some numbers, and it blew my mind. Let's say Lamar Jackson gets a 6-year extension, just like Josh Allen. If his average salary is $44.5 million, it comes out to $267 million. It's a massive contract. I mean, it's slightly more than Josh Allen, and this isn't really a conversation about who's better, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It really doesn't matter. Quarterbacks, each time a quarterback signs a massive contract and it's this record-breaking deal, the next big quarterback to sign a contract is going to have the record-breaking deal. We saw it with Watson and Prescott. Deshaun Watson signed a contract, paid him $39 million per season, and then he couldn't keep his hands to himself. But 6 months later, Dak Prescott signs a contract that pays him $40 million per season. It's quarterback contracts are just crazy, which
they fucking are.
Right. And you may remember we talked about it, a couple of weeks ago, I think, with the 2018 quarterback class. We're like, hey, there's 3 big guys that got to get contracts, and whoever gets their contract signed first, that team's going to be the winner.
Right.
Because because not only is Buffalo locked up their guy, they've also made it more expensive for Baltimore to keep Lamar Jackson, just naturally. Because now Lamar Jackson's going to look at, so Josh Allen, his agent looked at what Patrick Mahomes did with his contract to get this contract set up. And now Lamar Jackson's going to look at Josh Allen's contract and go, how are we going to get this set up? But back to like my projected contract for Lamar Jackson, 6 years, $267 million. If he gets 55% of that guaranteed, which that's what we've been seeing on average. And in fact, like Deshaun Watson only got 47%. He brought that average down, but we'll say 55%. That's what like the top 6 guys were getting besides Josh Allen. And I'm going to come back to that in just 1 minute. But Lamar Jackson's contract, like if he got 55% of it, 55% of the 267 million, it comes out to about 147 million. Like it's borderline 150 million. Like
right.
And I fully believe Lamar Jackson's going to get 150 million guaranteed at signing. And another thing that kind of supports that, like I'm taking the listeners through my article basically, but this last point is what like I connected the dots. I was like, holy shit, it's going to happen, is that option bonus. Right, that 42 million option bonus, where like the question was, why didn't they make it a signing bonus? Turns out it was salary cap stuff. They couldn't, but he was gonna get that guaranteed money. Let's just say the Bills actually had salary cap space in 2022 and they could make it a signing bonus. So 42 million, throw it on the 100 million that was guaranteed at signing. So because essentially 142 is guaranteed at signing. I kid you not, that comes out to be 55% of the $258 million contract for Josh Allen. Even Josh Allen basically got 55% guaranteed at signing his contract.
It's just set up differently. It's just set up weird.
So I put a poll. On Twitter. I said, guys, we've seen the Josh Allen extension. Lamar Jackson's going to be next. I'm going to throw a number out there. 150 million guaranteed at signing. What do you guys think? And I put over, under, or you're spot on. I think 20% were with me on like 150 million and 43% said under. And I'm here to tell people, like, you're wrong. If you think it's going to be under 150 million, you're not following this quarterback market. It's going to be massive. If it's a 6-year contract. Now, obviously, if shorter length, not going to hit the 150 million, but it's going to be crazy.
So I got a few things before we move on. A couple of things from my perspective, and then I have a question for you at the end. So the small details, I love this shit. This little option bonus. Learning about all these little things is pretty crazy. And like, I don't care nearly as much about the contracts and all of that as you do. But I'm starting to a little bit, at least, like, because I do learning all these different things just by listening to you. It is really cool to understand that stuff more. So, it's definitely, I love that you are so plugged into that, because would have been something I never thought I would have found so damn interesting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, the little small things like that fucking option bonus. So because like you said, that means exactly he's going to get the guaranteed money that he should. It's just broken up a little bit, and it's just done a little differently because of the salary cap. So it's just crazy. And then my brother, who, as I've mentioned before, lives in Buffalo, diehard Bills fan. So he's all over Josh Allen, very aware before last year. Not much into Josh Allen myself. So he's like, okay, what do you think about my boy's contract? And I'm like, well, you should listen to our podcast and see what my co-host thinks of this of the contract. But all I would say, the only thing that made me think anything really of it, because I imagine all the dudes are going to get paid, is I was surprised Josh Allen was first. That was really the only thing I had. I was kind of surprised with that. But you're right. It's great for the team. Because like
Absolutely.
my brother was like, hey, as a fan, I'm glad we got it done first. It's over with, it's in the books. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm just saying personally, I'm surprised for him because that's where it comes to, like it's great for the team, maybe not as great for the quarterback. If you could have gotten more. And so yeah, I was surprised that Allen went first, but good for
Right.
the Bills. And we'll see how spot on you are with this Lamar thing. But then that
Yeah.
leads me to the one
I can't wait on
question.
that one.
Right. Then I would ask you before we move on, what about Baker then? Because you would think that would say, okay, well, if Lamar signs before him, then does he get a bigger one than it? But a lot of people and the Browns could probably use it against him and say, hey, you're not as accomplished as Lamar or Josh Allen. So what do you think Baker's contract might look like? Or do you think that's going to be dependent on what Lamar does?
It's one we when we were kind of predicting who we thought was going to sign first. I mean, we were sitting there, we're like, okay, it's going to be Allen or Jackson, and we know that Mayfield is going to be last. Not anything that the Browns are doing. The Browns have shown they have been super aggressive of locking up their guys. Like they just recently
Right.
gave Nick Chubb a contract. Like they're not. I don't think they're opposed to getting a deal done with Mayfield, but I think Mayfield's agent knows that, like you talked about, like let these other guys sign some of their big contracts. It's any quarterback contract does affect the other guys. It's Allen's
Right.
contract directly affects Lamar Jackson because they were competing. I mean, Josh Allen's getting roughly 43 million average salary per year, and then when that contract came out, like Spotrac put out like the calculated market value was affected by that, and Lamar Jackson's going to be 44 and a half. Like Allen signing like cost the Ravens a couple $1 million per year. Now, on the market value for Baker Mayfield, they have him signing for probably around 35 million per year. I'd agree with that. It's tough. Like that $40 million per year is tough. Like we've only seen four guys: Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, and technically three. What is it, three or is it four? And then Jackson will make it five. Like there's not much. That's the main point. There's not many QBs that top the 40 million. Even Deshaun Watson's 39 million, not quite in the 40 million. That's why I'm like, Baker's not going to get 40 million, but 35 million, I could see that. And it looks, so what they do is they take some comparable players, especially guys that have signed recent contracts. They have like Jared Goff's contract, is 33.5 million. Which guy are you taking? You're obviously taking Baker. And so he's going to get at least 33.5 million. I think the 35 million spot on, maybe a couple million more. It depends on how much they really like Baker, but they may tell Baker, like, look, we brought Chubb back. I can't remember if there's another guy they're working on. Maybe Denzel Ward. He would be.
I think
be
that
in
might be
that
right.
same class. Yeah, I don't remember if he officially signed or not, but
Right.
they also gave Myles Garrett a big extension too. And what they may come back with is, look, we've spent all this money on very important pieces of this team. I do believe the Browns can compete for a Super Bowl. Like people need to talk more about them. They did a lot of good things this offseason. They may tell Baker, hey, we can win this with you. We absolutely can, but we can't give you, certainly can't give him a Mahomes contract, obviously. But
Right.
even this Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, no. And clearly the reason those two guys are going to get over 40 million, Lamar Jackson's one MVP in the league, and Josh Allen was runner up last year. Rodgers won, and I want to say Josh Allen was runner up. Like those guys have had phenomenal seasons on the resume. Baker Mayfield's been really good, and I think we all agree better like NFL quarterback. Like not the guy that's going to put up the stats, but a guy that you look at the advanced stats. Like he plays well as a quarterback, but they may say, look, we've got this strong team, we've got all these weapons. they're probably the team that's best positioned to go, look, if you don't want to, if you're too expensive for us, they may go in a different direction. It's
Right.
a small chance. Like, teams just don't let franchise quarterbacks go. But Spotrac, I think, spot on. The puns, they continue. Spooked on. So 35 million. Sounds about right. Like, it looks like the high end. They do take Dak Prescott's contract into account. What could they possibly do on this one? I think my guess is contract extension for Mayfield's going to be closer to the length of a Carson Wentz, a Dak Prescott, because these Brown contract extensions have been short. Nick Chubb was a 3-year extension. I'm going to say kind of what I don't like giving gut takes, but admittedly, I haven't done a whole lot into Mayfield yet because, man,
I put you on the spot.
You put me on the spot, and I like it. But like the guys that they're comparing them to, they've been signing 4-year extensions, so that's the way I could see it. That feels about right. Like I like Baker, but
I agree, and I really like Baker. As a matter of fact, you know what I was going to say, and this goes out to my boy EDG as well. One of the things that I was going to bring up last week during our discussion, Brady versus Baker, was, I don't know if you heard the Podfather recently on Roto Underworld Radio discuss his own belief in Baker Mayfield. So it's not just me. I just wanted to point out that loves them some Baker Mayfield. So I just wanted to point that out. Sorry. But yeah, we'll have to see. And like I said, I wouldn't expect him to get as much as either of those guys, but it will be interesting to see. But I think we probably Oh yeah. and I think I think it'll end up being a little bit of a bargain, because I think I think he's gonna play a lot better this year. I really do. I really do, my friend. So
certainly,
I talked plenty about contracts and salary cap.
Yeah, sorry, I've like totally ruined my article is just right here on the podcast. Like, I got super excited about like connecting the dots. I think that prediction, I initially put it as a bold prediction, and then when I started putting the numbers, I was like, it's really not that bold when you start doing the math on it. Right. It just sounds bold. Like Lamar Jackson's going to get 150 million guaranteed at signing when Josh Allen got 100 million. But yeah, it's those option bonus. That's what you got to look for in these contracts. And if you want to have your mind blown, pull up Patrick Mahomes on Spotrac. The details on that contract is just it's like an encyclopedia. It just keeps going. It's super.
I can imagine. I can fucking imagine.
But also, this is a team friendly deal. Last point I want to make is like this deal. I believe, like we talk about like a competing window. The Bills still have a solid like 3-year window where like they can compete and still afford pieces and stuff. Like it's I think, in my opinion, team friendly.
Excelente. As my brother would be happy to hear. Okay, so we'll go ahead and head on into the news section. We're going to run through the news, and then we'll talk a little guillotine maybe and call it a day.
I like it.
Or a night, we should say. So I'll begin with, hey, we actually had some football. Wasn't on the show sheet, but I figured, hey, we don't even really have to talk about it because didn't shit happen. But there was a preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, and we had the Hall of Fame ceremony. Peyton Manning did his thing, and Edgerrin James. Who else am I forgetting?
Oh man,
I really
I feel Troy Polamalu,
right?
Of course, his safety. Man, I know that makes me such a horrible football fan. I don't really pay much attention to.
I did honestly. I usually don't. To be honest, care all that much. I mean, it's
when Jonnu goes in.
Of course. So yeah, and again, not much happened in the game. I mean, not
There was
many
a
of the
scare.
starters. Huh?
Chase Claypool news blurbs come up on my
Oh
phone,
yeah,
and I,
that's
I had
right.
been
That's
watching the
right.
game,
After
and
that
I'm
late,
like,
yep.
oh, I have him in the Dynasty League. I was not happy about that because why is he playing in the Hall of Fame game? But seems to be okay. I think he
Yeah.
came back in.
Did he?
Oh, I was
Oh,
asking because
oh
I
no,
didn't
no,
get to
no.
watch the game and I couldn't find a stream to watch later on. That's
I
sad.
had
I was looking for a stream to watch a preseason game.
I had intended on watching, in large part because I had taken dude, my brain is totally blank. I seriously had so many brain farts tonight. What the hell is the rookie's name? Who am I thinking of? Pittsburgh's running back.
Oh, Najee Harris.
Oh, good God, Aaron. I am
I
losing
got
my
you.
goddamn mind today.
And we're going to go into his contract.
Oh man. Okay. So good God. Anyway, I had intended on actually watching the game to see how much of him they used and to see what he did specifically because I grabbed him in a guillotine league, and then I forgot. And then by the time I turned it there, it was pretty late in the second quarter. And then I was like, That's usually where I give up on preseason games. It's about halftime. But so yeah, so that happened. Had the ceremony, good stuff. This year we only have 3 more preseason games instead of 4. Correct? So
you're correct. Yeah, it's weird.
So we're one step closer to the damn season, and that brings on even more and more news and some of it, some rumors. You get some stuff from the rumor mill, such as Miles Sanders, this split in time with Boston Scott. You got that, and then Burrow struggling. I guess this is more than rumors. People are actually talking about this stuff, but you know what I mean. Sanders, Scott, and then Burrow. What are you thinking, Aaron?
I'll say, full transparency, I have a Breakout Finder article that calls Miles Sanders like the fantasy football breakout running back, like a guy that wasn't going like first 3 rounds that can make it into the top 12. Because I do believe, like, and part of what I mentioned is, like, on top of statistically and like advanced stats and analytics, being a talented running back and having all of, like, the things you look for: opportunity, productivity, and efficiency. And part of what I mentioned was, yeah, there's no one in that backfield. Like, yes, they brought in Kenny Gainwell, a 5th-round pick. Like, Gainwell, we all like Gainwell, but clearly the NFL not as much as like us Dynasty folks. And I mentioned Boston Scott. I'm like, it's fine. He's a Jag. Like, you have to have those guys, right? You have to have those guys. And if they're playing the Giants, Boston Scott's great. They play anybody else, he doesn't do anything. But I feel like it, in reading the report, because it comes from a pretty trusted Eagles reporter, you do have to be concerned. Right now, I'll put mildly concerning, because I'm really only going to be very concerned with players when it comes to injuries. But I still believe in the talent of Miles Sanders. I still believe he should be getting that massive workload that he's gotten basically since he entered the league as a rookie. And maybe these injury concerns in 2 years, maybe that's changed what the Eagles think. Maybe they go, this guy can't hold up for a 16-game season. He's not going to hold up for a 17-game season. So I hate saying it, but you have to be concerned. I mean, it's not even so much Boston Scott. He's Boston Scott, just a guy. But the Eagles clearly want to utilize other running backs there. That's going to affect his ceiling, and I hate that. I wrote an article, and I hate saying these the words I've said.
Right.
But I'm just mildly concerned. How about you? What do you think about Miles Sanders?
Yeah, I was going to say, before Burrow. I guess I do. I look at the Boston Scott thing, and I think you brought up a very good point. Um, I don't know, several podcasts ago, pertaining to the idea that most teams are going to use a second running back a little more heavily than they used to, just the 17 game season. So not only is there an extra game, that's a longer period of time. You want to keep that top running back a little more healthier. So maybe you get that second running back working a little bit more during the first part of the season, the first half of the season. So we could see something like that. So this isn't as concerning. I'm just beginning to get concerned about the Eagles as a whole, based on some of the things I've heard on Roto Underworld. I mean, my biggest thing is it feels to me like some of the shit I've heard and read that they don't like Jalen Hurts. It feels like that a little bit. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just like, it's weird. Some of the comments that people have made, it's, I don't know. So I do wonder, like, what the Eagles are really going to be like, and if they're really, really somehow in play for Deshaun Watson, there's a very good chance Jalen Hurts is involved in that deal. And I would say they have to know there's a possibility they don't get Deshaun Watson for a while if he gets suspended. And so it's just like, this could, depending on how things go, this could be a very crazy offense. Now, maybe overthinking things, and Hurts gets to just prove himself, and he fucking will. So, it's just, there's little trickles that just have me a little bit concerned about the Eagles kind of overall. You know what I mean? And, but as far as just the Miles Sanders thing, and I would say the injury concern can be very real. I mean, people say there's no injury prone. Yeah, but there is, proof that there's some guys that just can't stay healthy for some reason. And maybe there's no way to kind of predict that, but that does seem to be the case with some guys. They just can't stay out there. So we just got to hope Sanders isn't one of them, because the talent's there. So,
right.
But I guess that means make sure you get some Boston Scott at the end of your benches, because he may be more than useful this year.
And probably like you said, Gainwell's
got to be the better talent. He's got to work his way up to that second spot eventually. So that's really, you're right. That's the guy to have. But go ahead. And what do you think about reports Burrow struggling in camp?
I will say that a lot of the struggles I don't want to say people forget, but I think we've hyped up the Bengals because the potential for this phenomenal passing offense is there. Like Burrow's a talented passer, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, but we do have to remember that it was mid-season when Joe Burrow tore his ACL. We saw some videos of Cortland Sutton, who tore his ACL in week 2, where there was some hesitancy in cutting. And a lot of times when it comes to ACL injuries, these professional athletes, it's not anything physical. It's never anything physical. And I can only speculate. I have not torn my ACL, but a lot of times when athletes talk about it, it's a mental aspect.
You hear that. That's mental shit. Yeah,
exactly. It's, oh no, what happens when I get hit again? It's like, it's the ligament get tear. It's very much a mental block. And Joe Burrow was talking about it with some of the reporters there. And I actually had one of the few reasons I have the Athletic subscription there, so like I can kind of keep up with some of the beat reporters. And Joe Burrow was saying how most of his stuff is just, I'm just trying to, he didn't even blame it on his poor performances on his knee, but did kind of acknowledge like there is kind of some mental aspect to it, because it's, you get in a rhythm in a season, and then when was it he was able to actually start practicing? So you have to kind of relearn some things, but in the back of your mind, you are thinking about that. So it's not that Burrow is a bad player. This is just, it's something that any player that tears an ACL, you usually don't want him that season after he's coming back, because they're kind of getting things that may be about mid-season, depending on when they tore their ACL, that they start kind of getting in a rhythm. I usually, my rule of thumb when it comes to fantasy football redrafts is I'm not touching any players that tore ACL. Next season, yeah, they'll be fine, they'll be perfect. But Adrian Peterson's like the one exception of that, like that one freakish performance. But
it takes a year.
Yeah, like the struggles, it comes with this recovery from torn ACL. He's physically recovered. It's mental. What about you? What do you have to say about Joe Burrow?
I can't disagree with anything you said. I mean, of course he's struggling. It's his second year. He's coming off the ACL injury. Of course he's struggling a bit. That doesn't surprise me at all. Am I worried about him? I wouldn't have had him in redraft specifically because of the ACL thing. So, get that. But in Dynasty, no, I'm on board. He'll be looking fine. If not mid-season, Burrow will be fine. And so Dynasty, yeah, I'm not worried about him at all. But it doesn't surprise me that he's struggling right now. So no. Speaking of injury, Kenny Golladay. This is bad, man. Here's a guy I've hyped up. Kenny Golladay, hamstring strain. And you know what they say about those goddamn hammies getting strained. So this to me is a quite worrisome. What say you, Mr. Aaron?
Same. Players are dealing with strains, sprains. It's more specifically the strains. So for people that may not know, there is a difference between strains and sprains. Strains is your muscle tendons. Those concern me more than sprains. I mean, sprains are unfortunate too. I mean, that's right. Your ligaments, but anything that's muscular. So I see that, and I probably not touching Kenny Golladay. Probably not. I'm curious how far his ADP is going to drop in Underdog. It's dropped quite a bit. It's dropped a lot. But
it sucks because he was pretty down there early on in the summer. And then I think there got a little hype around him. So he crept up, and now he's going back down. Cause at least that's how it felt to me. Cause I felt like I had a lot of him early on in the summer when I was drafting best ball, just because he seemed to be there in just a perfect spot for me. So this is really, really kind of a bummer. I was hyping him up. I still believed in the player, and it is just a bad injury coming off a year where he was banged up. Like, this is just, it's, especially heading in onto a new team, all of that, it's not impossible for receivers to get. Stephon Diggs last year is a prime example of that, going to a new team and being fucking awesome right away.
Yeah.
But when you're coming off injuries and you pick up a new one in the midst of trying to, establish yourself on your new team, this is just unfortunate shit. And I love me some Kenny G, so I'm bummed. But
and also, like, it's not just Golladay. I mean, this one pains me. Deandre Swift's been dealing with a groin injury and missing a lot of time. And to tie it into a running back we talked about earlier, Miles Sanders last offseason. Miles Sanders was getting a lot of hype. Swift is not nearly on the hype that Sanders was getting last year, but still, like, Sanders was dealing with injuries, and like, oh no, he missed like week 1. And a wise saying in fantasy football is don't chase the injuries. The injuries are going to find you. They are, especially now in a 17-game season. Don't be you're basically handicapping yourself already by drafting a player because you won't be able to utilize them. That sucks. But then they're just taking up a spot on your bench too. And I'm monitoring the groin with Swift, but the longer he misses time, the more I'm not going to have him in redraft. And then this one really hurts. There was a rookie tight end. You know where I'm going with this? A rookie tight end down in Miami, Hunter Long. Possible torn ACL, not confirmed, but
right.
Some of the doctors on Twitter, like actual doctors, there are tests that you do, and I don't remember these tests from my days in school, but I actually got to. For people that don't know, my background is in pre-PT. I went to Texas State. Texas State has a phenomenal athletic training program, and part of the undergrad program is you basically get trained as an athletic trainer, and there is a whole list of tests that you do to confirm and rule out certain injuries. And there's at least 6 or 7 for ACL, and one of the doctors, it might have been, which guy was it? I want to say Edwin, but don't quote me on that. One of the PTs on Twitter said that looked like the Lachman's test, which is and it's just from a picture, so you can't even. You're basically just going off position there and kind of where the hands of the athletic trainer is. But Lachman test is a test athletic trainers do for torn ACL, and he was described as being dejected, couldn't put any pressure on the leg, and you're like, oh,
that sucks.
So not good. Like it's looking,
and
he'll be lucky if he missed the torn ACL, but
yeah. And to pile on, sorry to pile on, but I just read that Aaron Jones was also not at practice today due to a hamstring injury. Sorry.
Oh, no, I got Aaron Jones in one of the guillotine legs. Oh, no. Chewy, no. But this is the lessons to take from this for people listening to the show. It is important to keep up with these injuries, and especially the strains and even the sprains. But strains, I find in particular, like when you're dealing with muscles, no. That is no bueno. They draft responsibly. Definitely don't reach for those guys. Like you're going to just kill your team before the season even started.
100%. Okay, so we got some drama, some NFL drama talk. We're going to get into a couple of things. You got the Packers Rodgers situation that's been worked out. A-Rod's back, and it sounds like he has the option to request a trade for next year. And that's what we figured. They're going to give it one last hurrah and then part ways. And then you've got the Texans and Watson. I don't know what the hell is going on there. All of a sudden now the Texans think Watson will play for, like this is some fucking weird shit that's going on with the Texans and Watson. And then one last thing, and I'll let you unload on it, Aaron. There was also this Saints Michael Thomas drama that's going on as well. So it's just drama. But apparently the Saints were upset that Michael Thomas didn't answer some calls, and then all of a sudden he's getting a surgery, and Michael Thomas is upset, think they're making him out to be the bad guy. Oh, okay, so we got all this drama going on. It seems like as far as the Packers and Rodgers, seems like they've got things worked out a little bit. Their drama's kind of coming to a conclusion. Aaron Rodgers is driving around in his little golf cart all the time. I'm actually a little fucking jealous. And then you got the other drama. So let me know, Aaron. Let me know what you think.
Gotcha. I'm going to start with the Houston Texans one because it's really brief here. Like you're talking about how absurd it is. It's because it is. Like it is. I mean, I think the other 31 teams are seeing through this. This is, in my opinion, This is strictly the Houston Texans trying to create some form of leverage. Like, oh yeah, we want Deshaun Watson to come play for us. Maybe we'll trade him to you if you really, really want, but we really want to keep him, so you're gonna have to pay up. That's how I kind of took that. I mean, that's what they say, but then you look at what they've done. Like the very first draft pick, when they didn't have a first or second round pick, they went and drafted a quarterback. And is Davis Mills the answer? Probably not. But
No.
just the actions speak louder than words. They went and brought in multiple veteran quarterbacks. The Texans aren't fooling anybody. Well, okay, maybe they can fool one of the 31 NFL teams, and then good for them. Then this whole thing works. But to me, that's all it is. What about you? What do you think about that with the Houston Texans?
I just think it's all a mess. I wish it would resolve itself. Like there were people, like one of my favorite podcasts, the Around the NFL podcast, they were constantly harping about the Aaron Rodgers thing. And I'm like, that is one of the greatest quarterbacks of our time that has not gotten enough help from his management. And I'm like, if he wants to throw a fucking fit, more power to him. And I'm saying this is a former, Vikings fan who was not a fan of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. But hey, come on now. It's a much different. So like I did the whole thing with the Texans and Watson and all of that. I'm ready for that to be over, as much as some of these other people were ready for the Packers Rodgers drama to go. I didn't mind that. I'm ready for this shit to be over. I don't know why the hell the motherfucker's not on the exempt list. I really don't understand that. Just to keep him out of the fuck, because I don't even know what the Texans are. It's a mess, dude. I'm like, what is going on here? This dude has been accused of some crazy ass shit, and he's just out there practicing, but then they're not like treating him like he's the guy 100% of the time. Like it's a fucking mess. I hate it. I'm over it. Sorry, I probably talked longer about it than I should have.
Nah, I mean, I think we're all in the same boat there. We're all through. I think the only reason he hasn't been on the commissioner exempt list is speculation. I'm certainly no expert in law. Again, I read contracts I could read NFL player contracts all day and it makes sense. But I think it's because the legality stuff's still going on, I guess, is probably why we're just in this awkward
that actually
limbo,
makes sense. Yeah.
That's the only reason I think nothing's happened, but we'll see on that one. But yeah, I'm with you. We've talked so much about Deshaun Watson since you and I have both been doing this podcast. Really quick on the Aaron Rodgers. What I do want to start off with is props to Ray, our editor over at Player Profiler. Wow, it was quick. I got transaction implication article on Aaron Rodgers completed. I want to say it was Saturday morning. And then boom, Monday morning, it was already published. Like he's the man, able to go and get that live. So I mentioned that because I have all of my thoughts on that with Aaron Rodgers right there. The one thing, I guess kind of some bullet points on that is.
Oh, you mean you're not going to spill the whole article right here like you did previously?
I could. I got super excited about Josh Allen. But bullet points with Aaron Rodgers.
No, you're true.
I think most of the stuff everyone knows, but it's going to be his last season in Green Bay. Like that is just like we're all ready for it to be done. We have a countdown. When that contract was restructured, we were given roughly I wouldn't even say 12 months. Like we're talking like off season next year, maybe March. Yeah, I'd say March. By March, this will be resolved. We'll know where he's at. Like, because that contract prevents him from being franchise tagged. It voids in 2023, but the reason that he's going to be on the move in 2022 is he carries an absurd like $46 million cap hit. Like that's a lot. Or no, I don't think it was 46 million. I think it was like 43 million. And on top of that, the Packers are 46 million over the cap. I get it. People that have followed what the Saints have done, like, yes, you can manipulate the cap to a degree, but all of Rodgers' weapons, Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, you pull up their upcoming free agents for 2022 and sort by receivers and tight ends. It's everybody. Like all of his weapons are going to be gone. And here's the fun thing. The Packers, because he's under contract, they could go, you're under contract, you're going to come play for us in 2022. Rodgers can retire and get this because of the restructured contract. Usually you retire, you have to forfeit your guarantee money. Part of this restructure is if Aaron Rodgers decides to retire, he doesn't have to pay that guaranteed money back. He can literally take his ball home and collect his money.
That's fantastic.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So he's gone because $46 million over the cap. You have no way of keeping Devontae Adams. You have no way of even keeping a guy like Tonyan. And Broncos makes the most sense. I mean, it's not a bold take on that one, but I do have one bold destination for Aaron Rodgers. A division rival of the Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders. John Gruden, since he came back to the Raiders, he hasn't drafted a quarterback with significant draft capital. He hasn't, he signed Marcus Mariota. He hasn't signed a notable free agent quarterback, right? Like it's just, he's had Derek Carr there and they've just kind of stuck with him. But next offseason, Derek Carr's got zero guaranteed money. They can move on from him. They already have about $53 million in cap space, and they've already been linked to Devontae Adams. Kind of this is me going, we want bold, we want dark horse teams. Raiders go out and go and sign Devontae Adams. Then they could sign Aaron Rodgers because if you cut or trade Derek Carr, there's $19 million right there.
Right.
Basically, that money almost covers Devontae Adams. Just imagine Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams on the same team. Then you have Darren Waller. You got Brian Edwards and Henry Ruggs. Like that's at least a fun Madden offense. And that was me admitting in the article. It's a dark horse contender, but man, Gruden always wants to do these big moves. And their draft was focused solely on defense. I just think like
Rodgers,
crazy things have happened.
It seems like he wants to be on the West Coast. I mean, he wants to go back to the West Coast, so that can make sense. That is the one reason I can't necessarily, because I've got a bit of a dark horse one too. I think it's potentially possible for the Colts to get in the mix. I mean, you look at what's going on with them. They really want to win. They took a chance on Phillip Rivers, and then this year they were going to take a chance on Wentz. He's banged up, so it's probably kind of a, we'll see what Wentz is made of when he comes back kind of year. It doesn't feel like they're going to go out and do anything crazy. So maybe this is something they look at for next year. Like, hey, we've still got a really good team. We draft well. We do this well. Let's take that shot and try and get Aaron Rodgers here because, whoa, that would be a good one too. But I like the Raiders idea too. So very interesting stuff with that.
Could be some crazy stuff. But the major takeaway though is like the way that contract's designed, like he's not playing in Green Bay after this season. Like this is it. Like the reason I call the article, it's Aaron Rodgers' last dance. The reason they keep that Rodgers himself and Adams are putting pictures from the last dance. Like this is it. This is not even poor Packers fans. Like between Rodgers and Brett Favre, you've had 3 decades of excellent quarterback play for the most part. Like, geez, like 2 Super Bowls. Like some franchises would kill for that. So
right.
And then the rest of the NFC North, they celebrate. It will be going to be super weird when Rodgers moves on because what team is there to really take a hold of that division? Detroit's in the early stages of a rebuild. Chicago does have Justin Fields, but Chicago is just a crappy organization.
And that's true.
They lucked into Justin Fields,
right.
And the Vikings, they they had a pretty good draft. They've been finding good pieces left and right, but they've been paying a lot of money for Kirk Cousins. So that division's wide open, and it's going to be fun to see who takes over.
Yep. I'll be interested. And that's the thing about the Vikings, man, is they just it's like they do a lot good, but then there's like just a blemish. And it's kind of what they've always got, just a little bit of something holding them back, it feels like. Now, one last thing of news, then maybe we'll do a quick guillotine discussion before heading out. But had a little tight end hype. So since we didn't get to play our buy or sell game, Aaron, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm buying some Irv and Parham hype in best ball for sure. Now, I am admittedly a fan of Irv, so I liked him regardless. But to me, this is screaming best ball. I was reading something about Herbert is liking Parham as a fucking red zone weapon. Great. That's a best ball target right there. That's a perfect best ball target, if you ask me. So in that respect, yeah, I'm buying some of the hype on these guys. We'll see how it goes. But, not anything crazy. But, again, kind of figured Irv would be there. And you figure unless, was it McKitty who went to L.A.? No.
Yep. Trey McKitty.
So, most tight ends take a little bit of time, so you kind of figured, well, Parham's probably going to get the first crack. So there he is getting himself a little hype. So I don't mind either of the guys really. Aaron, what's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I'll start with Parham because I can't quit Parham.
He's fun to like.
He's fun to like. He's 6'8". Yes, he's probably a little more skinnier, but like he even was kind of self-aware of, like, he didn't pat himself on the back with his performance last year, and there were some impressive moments. Like, he definitely has a skill set that'll keep him around the NFL, but he's like, I got to get better, and the Chargers did bring in Jared Cook, veteran guy there that'll be the starter, but the offense coordinator.
Oh, that's right. They brought in. Forget about fucking
that. But that's okay. I think Cook is gonna be starting, but Cook's getting up there in age.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think we're expecting Jared Cook to play like all the tight end snaps there. And Joe Lombardi is the offense coordinator in Los Angeles for the Chargers. He came from New Orleans. Briefly, a while ago, I think back 2014, 2015, he was with the Detroit Lions. They had one really good season, and then the next season fell off. But he's been like Sean Payton's right-hand man in New Orleans. And when we had EDG back on the show, we talked about the Saints offense. Saints utilize a lot of, what was it? Did I say 21 personnel? No. Okay. It was 21 personnel was two running backs, but the Saints still utilize multiple tight ends as well. I expect Lombardi coming in, going to implement some of that. And Jared Cook actually had an interesting quote when he was talking about Donald Parham. I mean, more Camp Buzz than anything.
Right.
Paraphrasing, like, I guess they have these little scanners on that tracks their speed when, I guess, either when they're in the games, when they're doing the scrimmages, or when they're doing routes. And he said Parham was the fastest on the scanner. Now, could not find in that quote if he was referencing the tight ends, all receivers. Can't imagine. I mean, they got some speed there, but still, even Jared Cook's, like, even the fellow tight end is noticing Donald Parham in his performance there. So I'm with you. Like, I'm not quite sure if I could get on best ball, because, man, when you get to like the 17th, 18th round, there's some guys I really like. But
that's true. There's a lot of guys I like towards the end.
Like Dynasty.
But I mean, if you keep hearing some high, if it's true, like, that's the type of guy that could a few times a year get you a couple touchdown game. Like, you never know.
Certainly. I like him. I definitely like him in Dynasty as like one of those guys that you stash because, especially you mentioned tight ends. Tight ends usually is like the best position that you can target with free agency. Like you can almost always find like two or three guys that are worth picking up, no matter what time of the year it is. And Parham's kind of one of those guys. Fun to watch. Now with Irv Smith,
Yeah,
of course,
hold on, hold on.
oh,
I got to
yeah,
take
yeah.
it back on Parham. I got to take it back on Parham. I can just see in my head, I see EDG because him screaming at me for that take for the par. I could
Best
just
ball.
feel it. I took your words and then I thought about it for a second. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, it might not be best for best ball. I think that EDG probably that's probably one of the ones he wants to jump through the screen and yell at us for. So or yell at me for. So sorry. Irv Smith, you were saying.
Yeah, with Irv Smith, though, the quote was he continued to shine in red zone drills. And I love it because, like, you pull up player profiler, 2 red zone stats there. Irv Smith, just last season, had 12 red zone targets, number 16 amongst tight ends, and his red zone target share, 25%. That sounds absurdly high. It's because it is. It was number 6 amongst all tight ends. And remember, he was playing behind Kyle Rudolph. And then when Rudolph went down, he was splitting time with Tyler Conklin. And Tyler Conklin was getting some hype of because Conklin was impressive too. Right. We like him. Conklin's been injured though during training camp. So this has been one of the good things. I know early in the offseason, people were off Irv Smith. They're like, oh my gosh, like, it's a Vikings offense. It goes through Thielen and Justin Jefferson, which Justin Jefferson, I don't believe that this is a major injury, but he had an AC joint sprain, shoulder. So it's Jefferson got hurt. Conklin has been missing practice. Olabisi Johnson tore his ACL. It's just a matter of Irv Smith has been healthy and he's been playing. And when you're out there, what they say, you can't make the club in the tub. Well, not that Justin Jefferson's spot was ever, in doubt, but for Irv Smith, hey, when you're playing out there and you're practicing and you're one of the healthy top guys there, the quarterback's going to be looking your way. This should matter. And I think we saw the Irv Smith hype peak because of course Kyle Rudolph got cut and then it kind of plateaued for just a little bit. And then people are like, I don't know, like there's better options. And we start seeing them go down.
Right.
But it's about to take that turn back up. And I think by the time we get to these redraft leagues, his ADP is going to be right where it should be, where you could be like, I'm going late round tight end. And Irv Smith has the right amount of upside for that. So I like that. I like this for Irv. It's consolidated target share anyways, because we talked about it. The 2 receivers there, Thielen and Justin Jefferson, are going to combine for, if they're healthy, those 2 are going to combine for 45 to 50% of the target share. And none of these other receivers, BC Johnson was the only guy, well, he doesn't get much playing time in 3 receiver sets. BC Johnson is the only receiver to ever do anything. The Athletic had a recent 53-man roster prediction there. They did not have Chad Beebe make the team. Beebe or BB, the guy that is like their slot receiver. So it's either going to be Amir Smith Marset is like that third option or Irv Smith. And you have to give Irv Smith the nod here. He's now a 3rd-year veteran player and with more draft capital. They could see it.
I agree. Damn, dude. I do love me some Irv Smith. I always have. But you did leave out D.D. Westbrook. I'm just gonna
still there. He's and they actually
Mike Zim have him make say he liked him some D.D. Westbrook. What?
They the Athletic on their 53-man roster projection, they did have D.D. Westbrook there.
No, now there you go. I just wanted to bring it.
It is a matter of, and he's got the talent, like in terms of those other receivers, like Westbrook has that right combination of production. But they did have him as like number 5 because they said he still is working his way back from torn ACL.
Oh no, I
But
forgot about that. But still, yeah,
but they
I see
had
what
him.
you're
I
saying.
mean, if they have him making the team, despite the fact that he's still not quite able to practice, that does bode well for
Yeah,
him.
that's a good sign
So,
for sure.
mhm.
All right, dude. That was awesome. I was gonna do some guillotine league, but it's already been. Should we save it? It's already. This was supposed to
We'll
be a
say
shorter pod, and well, I was thinking we should save it
we
anyway
always
because I
like
think I
talking.
did this before when we were in a draft, and I was like, we should talk about the draft, and then we got to it, and I'm like, we should wait till the draft is over. So that all I'm gonna say is it's been fun. Aaron and I are both in a money guillotine league with a bunch of my people from my other different leagues that I commish, and then we're in the Roto Underworld Guillotine League. And I tell you what, that one has been
Brutal.
what did you reference it as? Brutal. It's been brutal.
Brutal.
And I tell you what, there's been just a couple of I don't normally look back on some of my picks and go, ooh, because I normally stay confident in my picks, but I feel like there's one, maybe two, where I could have done something a little better for my team. In the end, I don't think it kills me, but we'll get into that later. All I know is, man, it's been fun and so far, and it's been crazy to see the difference between the two, So
Right.
playing with our fellow Roto Underworld fellers and against some other guys, so more casuals. So it's been fun and very interesting. But that's all I got for the guillotine shit. We'll hop on that and talk more of that at another time. Probably wait till, if not the end of the draft, till towards the end of the draft. But Mr. Aaron, my good buddy, any final thoughts from you, Mister, on anything we talked about? Anything you want to close with at all?
Man, I think we got it all. I think we had a good show. We had to kind of change things up a little bit. And I know probably in like 2 minutes when people watch this podcast, it's going to go straight into an interview.
Right.
But it's great. We're finally at a time where things are happening in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. I mean, countdown is there. We're almost 4 weeks away. I think 4 weeks from this Thursday, like this when the season starts. It's
crazy.
I'm
man.
excited. Football's back.
It is. It's coming out. That opening week will be here before we know it. So it's going to be a blast. All right. Well, let's end this damn fantasy tea party. Get the hell out of here. Don't forget to follow us at RM Kenny Madness, at AARonstu09 on the Twitters. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, today, tomorrow, whenever you're joining us. Until next time, ta-ta for now. Lead us!
We're mad here in the Dynasty Wonderland.
All right, Dynasty Wonderland. It is your salary captain, Aaron Stewart, back here for another special interview with Anand Nanduri. He is the salary cap guru. You can find him on Twitter at Nanduri NFL. That's NANDURI NFL. He also has a wonderful podcast, the Decision Point Podcast on Roto Underworld Radio. I highly recommend checking that out for anyone, not just people that like fantasy football, but people that just like football, like the insight that Anand gives the viewers, the listeners. I go back and I re-listen to every podcast that comes out. It's such good information. Anand, man, how are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's been a great time, spending time with Josh Larkey on Roto Underworld initially, and then obviously the podcast with Matt, which we've gotten, rave reviews from, and we love doing it. So I hope that everybody tunes into the Decision Point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I already said, I highly recommend it. It's excellent content. There's nothing like that out there in the podcasting world. In fantasy football, that's hard to find. Every every podcast is the same. We were kind of talking about that off air here. And, I just want to kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. I know our time may be limited, but we had 3 massive extensions that came up, or 3 big name players that got extensions. The first one that happened was Aaron Rodgers, the restructure. Like the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers agreed to a deal that is interesting. I have some ideas on it, but I want to hear from you. What does this restructure, what does it tell Packers fans? What does it tell us about Aaron Rodgers' future? Like when you see that, well, what does it tell you?
I think he took a page out of a different sport, actually. Brady did this for a little bit in New England, but really the pioneer of kind of pushing your organization to do what's right by you by essentially signing a 1-year deal was LeBron James and coming back to Cleveland in 2015. And when he did that, he kind of forced the owner of the Cavs, Dan Gilbert, who he was at odds with, to build around him immediately and do what he wanted, because if not, you knew immediately he could go walk. And so this Aaron Rodgers extension obviously allows him to essentially part ways with the Packers in 2022 if he so chooses, which I think he will. I think the majority of people think that he's kind of run his course there. Mm-hmm. That's going to be potentially a 3rd full year of sitting Jordan Love on the pine. I don't think they can afford to do that. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So I think from both sides' perspective, it made a lot of sense to stay together this year. But going forward, they're really going to have to impress him in the next offseason in order to keep him there. And I don't know that they're necessarily the kind of organization that's going to push all their chips to the middle of the table and kind of take that run.
Yeah, because I know historically, Green Bay, I mean, back to Ted Thompson as the GM, like they just never do anything in free agency. It's they draft, they develop. It's rarely do they ever make a move to bring in a guy. So I'm with you. Like, I mean, Randall Cobb may be their big move. Yeah, we made Rodgers happy. But I'm with you. And I think that is the common thing, is that this is the last dance, right? all the memes and everything. Yeah. So it's.
Yep. I mean, I think they're going to make it look pretty for the cameras for a little bit. And I mean, if they start winning and they really push that Super Bowl, I mean, hey, what happens if they win the Super Bowl? I mean, obviously we're speculating here. I mean, you win the Super Bowl, are you really going to leave that team? And I think that's kind of where this gets tough, is I think he's on the same kind of wavelength that Brady was on his last couple of years in New England, where, hey, as long as we're winning, I'm down to come back. The second that I feel like we're headed in the wrong direction, I think I'm out. And so I think Aaron's protecting himself from that while also acknowledging, hey, I mean, we had a pretty special team here last year. I mean, you're a few bounces of the ball and a few really bad decisions, let's be honest, away from potentially being in a Super Bowl, and at which point, Aaron's happy and we're not having these problems.
Right. And yeah, shoot. I mean, just the decision to, like, what was it? What was it? They kicked the field goal and they missed. Like,
4th and 8. I think it was 4th and goal from the 8. And I think they kicked a field goal down by 8. Yeah. I mean, cite any chart you want, any metric you want, any football guy you want. It's very rare that the stats guys, the analytics guys, and the football guys all agree on anything. But I think everybody was in sync there that you don't kick that field goal ever for any reason.
And I think I was pissed because I had last season, I would do these Thursday night football preview articles. When I got to the playoffs, I started doing some of the playoff games as well. And I had the Saints and Buccaneers game. I was like, man, I think it's going to be close. But I was like, I think the Packers match up so well with the Buccaneers. I was like, I'll take the Packers. And to see that, I was like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. They had it. I thought momentum was on their side. And yeah, so it makes you wonder if those types of decisions, like where it's not just maybe the front office, but just like even coaching decisions where Rodgers is like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're not giving me help. Then coaches aren't putting the team in position to succeed. You got to feel bad for the guy.
I mean, to an extent, yes. And to an extent, no, right? Because Aaron Rodgers, for most of his career, especially when he was with McCarthy, was playing Superman. And I think that was part of the reason of why he had these brilliant individual seasons, but they would flame out in the playoffs to clearly superior teams, because his teams weren't built to win championships.
Right.
They were built for, built for whatever Green Bay wanted to do in the future. I think Green Bay is a much more forward-thinking organization as opposed to anyone that's in the present, which has its benefits and its drawbacks, right? They're always prepared, right? If Aaron Rodgers had walked, most teams would be in disarray. I mean, they had a viable backup plan in Jordan Love. I'm not saying he was ready, but you could essentially get the rebuild restarted.
Right.
I think LaFleur coming in and kind of helping Aaron out, bringing, turning Aaron Jones into what he is, making sure Devontae Adams gets his one-on-ones, scheming Tunyon and Jimmy Graham and whoever else they'd brought in. I think Matt LaFleur's offense helps Aaron Rodgers so much in terms of not having to be Superman all the time anymore. And I think that was a mutually beneficial relationship until you get to that point, which obviously Matt had never been in as really a primary play caller. And man, I bet he wishes he could have that one back, because man, that was about as big a gaffe in a situation like that as I can remember.
Oh, it was painful, but I guess like going forward, I read this and I was looking to try and confirm on Spotrac, but maybe you can confirm or debunk this. I read that like part of Aaron Rodgers is under contract 2022. In theory, the Packers could be like, you're under contract, you're going to play for us. And I read that Rodgers could actually retire, and instead of having to give back the guaranteed money that's owed to him, which usually is the case for retired players, that he could actually retire and not give back any of that. Did you see that anywhere? Like, is that actually an option?
Based on the structure, and my guess would be, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but that my guess would be that would mean that 2023 is a void year.
Yes.
And in that case, yes. Because if there is a void year in the future that the team has instilled in a contract and the player retires before then, that money will also accelerate. So in theory, Green Bay was borrowing from the future to pay for today, which is fine. And I mean, obviously they know the cap's going to go up and they're going to be okay. But Rodgers retiring as opposed to playing somewhere else is different. Rodgers retiring would really throw a wrench in some things if he did it at the end of 2021, if it's structured the way that I think it is. But I haven't delved that much into the particular contract. Like, I haven't delved too much in the details yet.
Well, one of the things I did notice is like his cap hit is massive. I believe he deserves it. He's the reigning MVP. It's going to be like $46 million cap hit. And or 46. I want to say they're 46 million over the cap in 2022. As we know, that doesn't really matter. Like teams like the Saints, really. 100 million last year. His cap hit. I mean, actually, his cap hit is 46 million.
I was going to say, you pay as much as you need to pay in a window when you have Aaron Rodgers, if you're not guaranteed to have Aaron Rodgers going forward, right? And I think New Orleans was the blueprint for that with Breeze. The thing is, if neither team gets a championship out of it, what do we say about that school of thought, right? I still think even though the finality of the verdict wasn't necessarily what you want it to be, I think you have to admire the decision-making process that led you there and say, okay, even though the result isn't what we wanted, I think the decision-making process was sound.
Absolutely, because as you mentioned earlier, I mean, they've been so close. Even these past two seasons, they've been so close. They've been, a 13 and a 12-win team, I believe, the past two seasons. Like, they've been one of the top teams. And it's literally, as we know, football, there's X amount of plays, and one or two plays can change an entire game. And who knows? If you let Aaron Rodgers go for that pass, they could have won.
Well, you think about it this way, right? Mm-hmm. The breakdown, the Scotty Miller touchdown at the end of the first half, that doesn't happen. You extrapolate out, they're down one. Now, football doesn't work that way, because obviously every decision from that point on would have been made differently. But ultimately, if you look at it as a zero-sum game, right, that's kind of what goes on, right? Is you needed 8 points. Well, essentially, when at the end of the game, you needed 5 points from somewhere, and you gave up 6-7 free ones. Against really, really good teams that are evenly matched like that, those kinds of plays make such a huge difference in outcome. And I think LaFleur could have afforded to be a little more aggressive early. Now, one of the things that I think gets lost in translation about that game, Aaron Rodgers is probably my favorite player in the league still. But, I mean, he had drives in the third and fourth quarter where they just didn't score points. I mean, he had every opportunity to win that game. It shouldn't have come down to 4th and goal. And that's just my 2 cents. But I think it's very easy to rip into LaFleur for the decision. And don't get me wrong, I did the same. And I think we're right to do that. But at the same time, that game wasn't lost on 4th and goal. That game was lost in the second, third quarter, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
It just ended the way that it did.
Yeah, because they put themselves in a massive hole. I remember watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, like come out with some fight, something, anything. You're really making my prediction look bad.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm with you. And I don't know if you've looked at like their list of free agents, but one of the other problems is even if Rodgers does come back, in theory, that is still an option. I like the LeBron James analogy that you gave. Like, that's perfect. Like LeBron James, the always signing the 1 year and plus a player option to keep teams on their toes and building the best team. Well, Green Bay is going to be without Devontae Adams and Robert Tonyan as free agents. And then on top of that, their roster got super expensive. Now, granted, they can do all kinds of things. Maybe they do some extensions on some players. They had some of their defensive guys with massive cap hits where it's almost they almost have to extend them or move on from them. But man, if you're sitting there with Aaron Rodgers, I think this deal really does do the obvious of what we're all expecting, where this is the last year and it forces them to trade them. And I think a dark horse team, because everyone talks Broncos. I think Broncos make sense. And actually I want to stick with the Broncos. Like they go in the draft. They need a quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater. Come on. That's not the answer. They have Justin
he's
Fields.
not it.
Yeah, they have Justin Fields and they pass on him. We know these teams always know stuff. Like, is it possible? Are we correct in assuming that maybe part of the reason they pass on Fields is they sit there and they smell blood in the water? And they're like, we could get Rodgers. Like, it's realistic. We can get Rodgers. If
That's what happened, that's really poor GMing. And George Payton's a smart guy. Mm-hmm. If that is indeed what happened, then that's really poor GMing, and that's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I was told by several people that they just weren't in on Fields. Whoa. And based on the way that board fell, they were very happy with the options that they had with their pick, and that's why they didn't trade out. So interesting. Because just real quick on Justin Fields, like, I guess it's because I got burned many years ago with Darius Geis, because I was like, Geis is a really talented running back. Now, obviously, scumbag, right? Jeez. But I was like, why is he falling behind these other running backs? And I've learned that, yes, sometimes GMs make mistakes and they miss players. And sometimes they draft Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. But when a lot of teams, when the consensus on a player is the same, and you start to see a talent like Darius Geis fall in drafts, and for Justin Fields, where I think early in the draft process, it's like Trevor Lawrence number one, obviously, and then it's going to be Justin Fields. They've been tied to the hip since their high school days, and then Fields falls out of the top 2, out of the top 3, and tumbles. It does, like, that's been really my concern. I've been, in terms of fantasy football, I've been pumping the brakes. I mean, I get it. You pull him up on Player Profiler. It's exciting. He's fast. He's big. He can run. He can pass. But I'm like, something just isn't right. Like, there's a lot of the Panthers and the Broncos that when teams tell us what they really think about players with their actions. Well, when you are the Broncos or the Panthers, right? Mm-hmm. Your rosters are more win now constructed than you think, you know, like I'm not saying that they're going to be Super Bowl champions tomorrow, but most rosters in the NFL can be built around a bunch of veterans that you go get in free agency, as long as you have the quarterback. I mean, find the quarterback in your rebuild is rather quick. Ask Indianapolis what happened when Andrew Luck was inserted, and suddenly the worst team in the league immediately is 11-5. And I mean, they got him killed back there in year one. It's not like he had world beaters all over the place. I mean, the man literally lifted a franchise out of the grounds, stepped into Peyton Manning's shoes and filled them, and maybe then some, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Finding the quarterback is so paramount important with the way that we pay these guys. Forget for a second how important the position is on the field, right? The way that we value these players in terms of how we pay them, everything is secondary to quarterback. So if you're talking about being in a draft, right, logically speaking, if you're treating draft capital as capital, the sooner you can get a quarterback, the better. And logically, if you can't get a top tier prospect at their position, move out and let somebody go up and chase a quarterback. Let them do something. Because I'll tell you what, throwing darts at a quarterback is never, ever, ever going to be the worst thing that you can do. It's not. Because if you throw darts at a tight end and miss, right? Like, let's say hypothetically TJ Hawkinson busts. I don't think he will. But let's say Hawkinson busts. That is a really bad draft pick. Whereas you go back 10 years, the Jets drafted Mark Sanchez. He didn't work out. He was awful. They went to back-to-back AFC championship games. As long as there's something there, you can get some kind of value. I mean, Sam Bradford, great example. Sam Bradford was terrible. And then Greg Robinson was completely worthless. So when you think about throwing darts early in the first round, you need to have a known quantity. And I think that was the weirdest part about the narrative that was surrounding Justin Fields. Is I think there was an element of, old guys thinking that, we know what we're doing. And I think the other element of it too was I think he got unfairly dinged for the Big Ten's ineptitude last year, one. And more than that, I think he got unfairly knocked down for one not even bad game against Indiana, just kind of a suspect game against Indiana where he did a lot of really good things, but also a lot of not so great things. But I mean, he's a kid. Like everybody else, who watched a Zach Wilson game last year? I mean, no, like seriously, who watched 3 years of Zach Wilson? Who watched those games, right? Who was watching Trey Lance at North Dakota State? And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's going to have the best career out of all of them. I think that so much depends on how their coaching situations turn out, how their GM situations turn out, and how much all of these organizations end up believing in their guy, right?
Right.
Because I think if you look at it that way, Mac Jones might have the best potential to succeed because I think he has the best head coach. That's just what it is.
It's a stable situation.
Trey Lance, I think he's going to have an incredible shot at success, right?
Right.
And the thing about Justin Fields, I think the kid was so unfairly profiled based on one questionable game and, all of these other things that stuff that was disproven that nobody cared to double check. I mean, everybody in Columbus loved the kid. I mean, every coach, every player had nothing but great things to say about him. And I think he was so unfairly judged in that decision-making process. But that being said, he did end up in Chicago with a fantastic defense, an offensive-minded head coach, really solid GM, really solid organization. And I think it would be really, really special if after all of that, after everything that Chicago has been through with their quarterback carousel, after all the ridiculous narratives about Justin Fields, if he's finally the quarterback for Chicago, I think that story as it's written will be really, really cool.
And even tying it to the Packers too, it's like, I think we all believe last dance for the Packers. And I was even thinking just last night, I was like, the Packers, because they have Brett Favre straight to Aaron Rodgers, like 30 years where they basically own that division for the most part. And you're like, okay, this is the end. Like clearly Green Bay is taking a step back unless Jordan Love makes this massive leap. And that's just, you can't put that type of expectation on him. Like, no. I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers, but like, I was like, who steps up in this division? And I'm like, this is actually pretty dang perfect for Justin Fields. Cause if Fields had gone to just throwing like Raiders, right? If John Gruden was like, yeah,
Oof.
we finally get our right. It's like you go to the division that's got Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, and it's tough to really excel because you're just constantly in those shadows. And so Chicago, I mean, Minnesota's a solid team, but Kirk Cousins, like as talked about, you can only really go as far as your quarterback. And
right.
Detroit,
And that's not I mean, that's not an indictment on Kirk Cousins at all either. I think he's very, very good. It's just Minnesota's in a weird spot where they're very expensive and kind of a time where you don't want to be, as Detroit's retooling and Chicago's got a super young quarterback. And, I think Chicago is very well positioned to kind of take a hold of that division. Maybe for the next 10 or 15 years, maybe not every year, but you know what I mean? Kind of the way that the Packers and Vikings have kind of been trading the division back and forth for the last decade plus. I mean, I think you could see Chicago and maybe another one of them get in there, but I think they're probably top dogs in the NFC North heading forward if Justin Fields is what we think he is.
Yeah, and I'm rooting for the guy. I mean, I know I was saying like, man, I am pessimistic, but it was mainly kind of looking at, man, you look back historically, QBs that fall outside the top 10, there are some hits. Absolutely. I mean, Mahomes was right there at pick 10 and Watson, the same draft, was pick 12, but it's more often than not, those QBs outside the top 10 does not bode well, but maybe Fields has that profile where I'm like, man, this is what I like in fantasy football, but I'm like, man, why were these teams? Maybe it was because, like, as you talked about, if you're not getting one of the top guys in this class, I think it's super deep. Like Fields may be the fourth QB, but yeah.
He doesn't look the part on camera because, obviously you got offensive linemen and freaks all around the place at Ohio State. I mean, it's not like, he was playing at Southwestern Louisiana where he would stand out. I mean, the kid is legitimately 6'3", 225.
Right.
It's not like he's slender and he's fast. He can make every single throw. I mean, if you were to build a modern quarterback in a lab, I think it'd look a lot like Justin Fields.
I think so too.
And I mean, Fields and Lawrence were 1 and 2, and you could have debated that till you were blue in the face since they were about 15 years old. And suddenly Zach Wilson and Trey Lance have ascended to a tier above. I didn't understand. And there was also conversation about Mac Jones being taken before him. And I'm like, guys, it's very, very, very rare that you have a quarterback of that level that performs like that in college that isn't going to translate.
Right.
And so the other thing is, I don't know if anybody watched the Brett Coleman video, not a plug. He's awesome. Rock star, does incredible work. Yeah. I mean, if you're a football fan and you haven't watched his YouTube videos, strongly recommend. But he did a breakdown of kind of who invented the spread offense and kind of went into the tiers and run to pass, pass to run, doing all the spread concept stuff, and then kind of extrapolated it out and what coaches have taken all of these pieces, the air raid, the spread, and kind of modernized it. And Nagy and Ryan Day kind of run this hybrid supercharged air raid spread power attack that Justin Fields uniquely learned, obviously because he was the quarterback at Ohio State, but also that Matt Nagy employs for the Bears. And so when you kind of look at what quarterback is best situated to make that seamless transition, I mean, I think Matt Nagy called up his old buddy Ryan and was like, hey, how good is this kid? And I think Ryan told him everything that he needed to hear. And I mean, I think playbook wise, this is going to be the easiest translation other than maybe Trevor Lawrence, because I think he was handed that playbook back in January while he was exiting the college football playoff. But other than that, I think this might be the easiest of them for anybody. So I'm really excited to see him in Chicago. I mean, what a city, what a quarterback. Yep. I really, really, really hope that he's the guy. I really hope that they can, surround him with the right pieces. And I really hope that he can get him one.
Absolutely. And it may be Justin Fields. He may be the guy to save, was it Ryan Pace's job that, you were talking about him being a good GM and we'll spend too long, but I don't know, maybe I was focusing on the wrong things, but I was like, man, like I've actually, the first time I recorded with Ryan, I was very much anti Ryan Pace. I was like, this guy just can't, but maybe it's because he couldn't get the the QB decision. And I think I've been judging GMs more off like wins and losses, but I'm like, I guess that is more of a coach way of measuring success than it is GMs. But I might have to save Ryan Pace for otherwise we'll keep recording for like 2 hours. Because man,
I mean, and no, I think one of the kind of misconceptions is that a GM is responsible for the for the ultimate success of the on-field product. A general manager's job is to give his head coach the best chance at success, right? And so often the head coach and the GM are talked about together, right? They're two very distinctive jobs. Now, if they don't work together, that's a problem, right? But they're very different jobs in the sense that a GM's job is to assemble talent. A coach's job is to take the assembled talent to the promised land.
Yep.
And so wins and losses, depending on the situation, it's not uniformly true, but wins and losses are a pretty poor way of evaluating a GM just because he has no day-to-day influence on what happens with the talent that he assembles, right? Like Jacksonville in 2017, loaded roster. Now you can't blame the GM in 2018 when everything implodes. No. That's not a talent problem. That's not a GM issue, right? Now, granted, signing Bortles is a bad decision, and we can get into that a different day. But you get what I'm saying.
Right.
Their job is to assemble talent, and treating them and judging them like we judge head coaches with wins and losses is an even tougher sell than it is for a head coach.
And I think you look no further than the defending Super Bowl champs, and you look at the GM, and of course everyone is now talking, oh yeah, such a great GM, he's drafted all these guys, and you talk about like, yeah, you can't use wins and losses because when you happen to pull them up in Pro Football Reference, like the records there's only one other winning season. If you go off straight wins and losses, you're like, how the heck has this guy been around 7 years? And I didn't intend to ask a question and didn't even directly ask it, but I love what you just mentioned there. Like, this is how we need to judge the GMs. And I can't wait to start going back through like off seasons and looking at GMs and going like, I've been thinking about, like, I recently went through the past 10 years of drafts and like noticing when teams trade up to get running backs, and I started looking at wide receivers as well, but I'm probably going to expand that to like just what GMs have done over the years. You start with, hey, this team, the Buccaneers, they won the Super Bowl. How did they get to this point? Like all the little bricks that were placed each year to build the foundation to where you finally go, hey, bring in Brady. That's the final piece to push it there. So I love this stuff. I'm a GM junkie there. I love the GMs more than the coaches.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tougher job if you ask me.
Yeah.
I think it is a tougher job because I think you're juggling so many more hats as a GM than you are as a coach.
Absolutely.
But I mean, obviously most coaches would disagree with me and most GMs would take my side. So I mean, take your pick as to who's right. It's there, right? It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Well, and I think I can use this as a great way to segue into the next talking point and talk about great GMs. Brandon Beane for the Buffalo Bills. I feel like he's done an excellent job since taking over.
Rock star.
Right. Like Buffalo, nothing happened in Buffalo. It was how many years did they go where they didn't make the playoff, or what was it? Not making the playoffs, or like without a playoff victory. And then Brandon Beane comes in and man, you look at that team and you're like, holy crap. Like suddenly past 2 seasons, 4 playoff games. They made it to the AFC Championship game. And then, of course, earlier this week, it was literally an hour after I wrote the show sheet and sent it to Ryan. And then it was like, Josh Allen extension. I was like, of course. Like that's been kind of a running joke on our podcast is like anytime we do a show sheet or even we would record Monday night, the next morning wake up and there'd be some huge news. It's like, of course. But Josh Allen, 6-year extension, $258 million and a NFL record, I believe, $100 million guaranteed at signing, which if anyone is kind of learning the basics about contracts, that guarantee money is the most important, especially the guarantee money at signing, like literally put your name on the contract, boom, $100 million for Josh Allen. Like, what have you had a chance to get to look at the details on this? What stands out on this contract to you?
Contract length stands out. I mean, 6 years is a long time.
Mhm.
$258 million, I believe it was, something like that. 100 million guaranteed to sign is a lot of dough.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about Brandon Beane, one of his big successes in Buffalo is getting veterans to stay and to buy in, right? Over and over and over again until they finally cleared that hurdle to get back into the playoffs when Andy Dalton threw that touchdown pass to beat Baltimore. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And then I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was a while ago. And then to draft Josh Allen, one, and just to say, hey, we're going to start him. We're just going to find out what the kid's got, right? And if people remember, year one, Josh Allen was a project that went out there and won games.
Right.
That doesn't happen very often. That does not happen very often. Now, I was much higher on Josh Allen than most people coming out. In my opinion, he was the guy in that draft class. Him and Lamar Jackson were kind of my guys. And so when Baker Mayfield was kind of touted as the number one, I was concerned. I kind of think people kind of wanted the college play to translate immediately, and he fell into a really good situation in Cleveland. And don't get me wrong, he may end up having the best career out of any of them. That may very well happen. But Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, to me, were just, hey, the physical tools are so ridiculous on these two. I mean, you have a mega charged Michael Vick over here, and you've got Big Ben Roethlisberger with like way more athleticism over here in Allen. If either of them ever figure it out, they're going to be well worth a top 5 pick.
Right.
And so obviously one of the things in drafting a quarterback is if you need a guy to start right away, you probably won't commit to getting a project. Right. And so one of the big gold stars that Brandon Beane gets is he knew, okay, it's going to take some time to get this kid ready, but we're just going to throw him into the fire and see what happens. And with McDermott and with the staff that they've built in Buffalo, they didn't ask him to do too much early. Early on, he leaned a lot on his athleticism.
Right.
He rarely threw the ball to the middle of the field. It was all scripted stuff. And off script, it was either play backyard football or run the ball. That's it. Right.
Love it.
Year two, they kind of adapted and kind of moved things along. And then this year, getting him Stephon Diggs and kind of retooling things a little bit, they said, all right, Josh, can you be a quarterback? And I mean, I think he passed that test. So when you talk about GMs and their hits, especially someone like a Josh Allen, right? One of the things that you've got to understand as a GM is just because one worked out does not mean they will all work out. And we're going to sing Brandon Beane's praises for taking the tall, lanky, athletic, cannon-armed quarterback out of Wyoming, right? And now you've heard the term, the NFL is a copycat league. Someone is going to try to find another project of a kid, tall, lanky, built, cannon for an arm, and see if he can work for them too. Reminding you of anybody? Jordan Love, Trey Lance, any? Like, you get what I'm saying, right? Not right. And there was once upon a time an archetype for a quarterback. You need to be over 6'3". You need to weigh about 200 plus pounds, have a decent arm, and have played 4 years in college. That was kind of the barometer for, are you an NFL quarterback? And now they come in all shapes and sizes. You have Kyler Murray and Cam Newton playing the same position.
Right.
They don't even look like they should be playing the same sport.
One looks like the kid of the other.
Right. Exactly. And so once you kind of realize that a quarterback is only going to be as successful as the stuff that you put around him, you start to appreciate a GM's duty a lot more. Now, there are quarterbacks that just aren't cut out to make it, right? And I think those are much easier to see than the others. Then there are just kind of middle of the road guys that are, going to be whatever the roster around them is. There are guys that can elevate you a little bit, but can't quite take you over the hump. And then you've got your Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Brady, Manning, that tier of guy where it's just, we can be awful and they might carry us to the promised land anyway. And so I think in paying him that kind of money, Buffalo is betting that Josh Allen isn't quite there yet, but can evolve into that tier of quarterback where it's, hey, he can carry us. If nobody else shows up on a given Sunday, 17 can go win us a game. And so when you have a guy like that, it empowers your front office to take risks and make bold moves like trading for Diggs, even when in theory you're giving too much up for something, right? Like some people are like, well, Diggs for first round pick, like maybe you could have gotten someone in the draft. You could have done this. You could have done that. No. If you know that guy is going to make your quarterback get better, go get him, right? Whether it's in the draft or whether you trade for him, whatever it is you do. Help your quarterback out, because that is essentially, even though in theory that's not in the job title of a GM, like at this point, with as important as that position is, as much money as we pay them, as much draft capital as we invest in them, right? Job 1 C D E F G of a general manager is help your quarterback. Because if you choose not to help him, you can get in an Andrew Luck-like situation, or he can start to regress like a Marcus Mariota. Look, if Marcus Mariota had inherited this Tennessee Titans team, who knows, man? He could have been really, really good. I mean, Ryan Tannehill was all right in Miami and then a disaster in Miami and is suddenly maybe a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Like, who saw this coming? Nobody saw this coming. Put your hands down, you goddamn liars. No. I mean, and I mean, the resurgence is incredible, right? But the job of a GM is to make his quarterback's life easy. The job of a head coach is to make his quarterback's life easy. And the more you can do that, and the more things that you can do to make him successful, I think the better he'll be. And that's why I kind of love each one of the fits for these young guys that got drafted this year, whether it's Lawrence, who's clearly Jacksonville fully committed to him. They fully committed to Meyer. And, whether that works or not is up for debate. But, they're committed. They have a unified vision, and they're going the direction they're going. The Jets, and bringing Robert Saleh and his whole new staff, which I think they did a great job doing, drafted interior offensive linemen and took Zach Wilson, which, personally to me, I wouldn't have done it. But if he's your guy, he's your guy. Like I have no problem with an organization choosing to commit to somebody in the draft and saying, that's our guy, we're going to go win with him. I think when you get into problems is when you say, oh, this guy kind of fell to us. Well, do we take him? When you kind of get into a Dwayne Haskins Washington situation, right? But you look at Lance in San Francisco, perfect skill set, perfect fit. Justin Fields in Chicago seems like a perfect fit. Mac Jones in New England, right? I mean, New England and New Orleans were kind of the two where you're like, he could do damage there, right? And so I think all of the first round quarterbacks kind of went to their best respective situations, kind of looking back on knowing what we know now. But of them, I think, going back to kind of what we were talking about with Josh Allen, they clearly knew he was their guy in Buffalo. And when they drafted him, they committed immediately to, all right, this team's going to be built in Josh Allen's image. And if we're wrong, we're going to completely implode everything, and that's fine. But if we're right, by the time he's at the end of his rookie contract, we're going to really be competing for Super Bowls.
And one of the things, too, that I noticed, like you talk about competing for Super Bowls, I thought it was interesting how they structured some of the guaranteed money, because there's a nice little option bonus in 2022 worth about $42 million. And it's kind of weird because the way option bonuses work, for people that want to kind of learn a little bit about these the salary cap terms, is basically it's like a team option. It's basically the year 2022 comes up and the team's given an option. Hey, do you want Josh Allen on your team for 2022? If so, you got to pay this option bonus. At least that's how I understand that. In its simplicity, is that what an option bonus is?
Sure. I mean,
okay.
Essentially the reason his contract is structured the way that it is to give them cap flexibility going forward, kind of like Mahomes' contract does, where you have a roster bonus every year that essentially it's a signing bonus, but it's written off as a roster bonus in order to kind of, move the money down the road, so to speak. But both of those guys are going to be on those teams for more than likely a decade, knock on wood that nobody gets injured. But it's pretty easy to kind of see those two guys being the faces of Buffalo and Kansas City, and kind of, you might even begin to see the whole Brady Manning Ben Rivers Brady Manning Ben essentially with Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, and Josh Allen. I think you can kind of see that brewing, and then maybe a Baker Mayfield in there as kind of the Phillip Rivers. We'll see if he ever breaks through. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I mean, I think the AFC going forward, the young quarterbacks look really, 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 really good. And that's going to be a really tough conference to win for a long time.
Oh, it's crazy that 2018 QB class. I mean, you look at the AFC, talk about Cleveland, Buffalo, Baltimore. Those teams, I think, are almost guarantees to make the playoffs. They're just stacked teams, that are led by QBs that can win games. And I actually have a bold prediction on we know Lamar Jackson's extension's coming up, and kind of my bold prediction. I put it on Twitter. I put a little poll out there, and I was like, guys, Lamar Jackson's next. How much guarantee money at signing do you think he's going to get? Throw in a number, $150 million. And I know it sounds absurd because it's like, well, Josh Allen got $100 million. Like, why? For transparency, I'm a huge Lamar Jackson fan. I just love watching him play. He's just Michael Vick in real life. But I think when you look at like the Josh Allen contract and you take some of the elite QBs that have top cap hits in the NFL, the numbers like line up on this one, because really Josh Allen, like he got $100 million, but that option bonus in the second year of the deal that adds another $42 million. Like Josh Allen was already close, in my opinion, to basically getting $150 million guaranteed at signing. It's 42 is delayed a year, but that actually I think had to do more with Buffalo's lack of salary cap space in 2022, like that flexibility. We all know these contracts are designed that players are going to get paid, most importantly, and then for teams, cap flexibility. And Buffalo would have really been hurting in 2022, which is not good when you're trying to win a Super Bowl in the next, let's say, 3 years with Josh Allen, where that contract is really not bad at all. But the reason I went with Lamar Jackson, $150 million, is Allen signing first is bad news for Baltimore, because that's what I've been watching here. I was like, Allen and Jackson are going to sign, and whoever signs first is going to hurt the other team, because anytime a superstar quarterback signs a big contract, the next superstar quarterback's going to get more. We saw that recently. Deshaun Watson, when he got his big contract with the Texans, he got $39 million average salary. And then 6 months later, Dak Prescott got $40 million average salary. And you could debate who's better as a quarterback, but it's just the matter of the QB market gets reset sometimes multiple times in the same year, and it's going to get reset. Like, enjoy the Josh Allen contract because Lamar Jackson's probably going to be not much bigger, but just enough to where he's going to set the I guess the bar for future superstar quarterbacks. And I went on Spotrac. I love that they have a calculated market value where they take guys that have signed contracts of similar skill set to kind of predict, okay, this is what they're looking at. Josh Allen was roughly $43 million average salary. And of course, that means Lamar Jackson is now going to be $44.5 million, around that $1 to $2 million more per year for the salary. And if Lamar Jackson gets 6 years, $44.5 million, that came out to be, I want to say those 270 million. It was like $267 to $270 million. And I went back and looked at the other big contracts signed. I omitted like Patrick Mahomes because that's such it's
an outlier.
Right. It's super team friendly, just crazy. But guys like Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, like the top six on average, they got 55% guaranteed at signing. And then with the Josh Allen thing where I was talking about, yeah, they had this option bonus, but really it was kind of a delayed, like guaranteed at signing, like you're getting it a year later, but it could have easily been a signing bonus if Buffalo had cap space. That the $142 million, I kid you not, I was drinking some wine while I was writing my Josh Allen article, and $142 million of the $258 came out to be 55%. I was like, holy crap, we have a trend on this one. And 55% of the $270 million, I don't have my numbers in front of me. If I had my home set up, I had all the numbers, but it was like $147 million. Like Lamar Jackson, by God, he he may get 150 million. It's not outrageous. And on that poll, it was like 43% said under. Like, I get it. There's people that hate Lamar Jackson, but they got to be realistic. Lamar Jackson's going to get paid. And thanks to Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen doesn't have an MVP either. So I think the really interesting thing with Lamar, especially him being I hesitate to call him a running quarterback because he is a quarterback that can run.
Right.
It's not quite, running quarterback's kind of a taboo term where it's like, oh, like this guy really can't throw. I mean, Lamar Jackson led the league in passing touchdowns in 2019. Not that anybody cares, because, it is what it is. But I think when you look at Lamar, I think the very interesting part of his contract is going to be injury guarantees and kind of what Baltimore does along with his agent in order to assure, right? Because the thing is, Baltimore's offense has a dynamic element of called runs for Lamar. Most offenses that have rushing elements for their quarterbacks may pull that out a couple times a game, but that's a fundamental part of their rushing offense is Lamar Jackson on called runs. And most teams wouldn't use their quarterback that way, right? But that also adds hits, that adds wear to his body. And so if I'm Lamar Jackson's agent, I'm not only trying to get as much guaranteed money as I can, I'm trying to get as many injury guarantees as I can, only because you've got to come to the table and say, hey, not only is my client a unique football player and a unique quarterback, he's a unique asset. You take him out of there and you have to run an entirely different offense. Nobody can do what my guy does. But at the same time, that exposes his body to more risk. And if we're going to take those risks, you're going to save him. You're going to add in those injury guarantees that you otherwise wouldn't want to. And I think ultimately the Harbaughs and kind of, the way that they do things in Baltimore, I think Eric DeCosta gets that done. I would be very, very shocked if for some reason that they don't come to a deal. But I don't know if that'll happen this offseason or next. If they do it next offseason, it's going to cost them more. So, I mean, I think EDC and that front office will get it done this year. It's just going to be interesting. I think you brought up a really good point about how it's going to compare to Allen's contract. I think it's going to go a little bit beyond. Maybe it goes a lot beyond. Maybe they wholeheartedly believe he's in that Mahomes tier and is just a unicorn because obviously we've never seen anything like it. I mean, even prime Michael Vick couldn't throw the ball like that. I mean, it's kind of a tough call if you're Baltimore to kind of figure out what you want there, but I would guess that you're going to see something maybe in the range of, if you do 6 years, like they did Josh Allen's deal, if you do 6 years, then I think you probably approach 280 million, somewhere in there. But obviously it's going to be difficult to tell without knowing exactly how long they're trying to extend them for.
Right. And man, for people that do want to start getting into looking at contracts and kind of figuring things out, I don't recommend going into looking at Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or whatever contract Lamar Jackson signs, because oh my gosh, like there is, if you go on Spotrac and you look at notes, like after like kind of some of the basic stuff, like here's your salary, here's your signing bonus, the notes are like an entire encyclopedia for Patrick Mahomes. It's absurd.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just.
But it is interesting, and that's why people should always be listening to you when you're on the podcast talk about all these different ways that teams can, I want to say manipulate the cap, but like how they can remain cap flexible. Because I think people understand basic stuff of you have a contract, there's guaranteed money, unguaranteed, get salaries for the most part. Unless it's specified. For the most part, salaries are unguaranteed, but really cool to start learning some of these things about like contracts being guaranteed for injury and roster bonuses, option bonuses, and understanding these terms, because especially the quarterback and whoever your favorite NFL team, go look at your quarterback's contract and you'll get a better idea of some of these terms. But so much options for GMs to just move money around to keep teams competitive. I think Josh Allen's one last thing on his was I think it's structured. they're not going to restructure the first couple of seasons. It's almost pointless. There's like no salary that they could really convert. And the 2 seasons after seem reasonable, especially expecting that salary cap to like skyrocket. So it's interesting that I don't think they're going to have to immediately take this contract and go and restructure the next season. I like that they'll still be able to have cap flexibility to add players without already going to, okay, let's restructure the QB contract and make whatever that final season ends up being just absurd. I mean, the contract's going to get expensive. It just is.
Oh yeah.
But, let's see.
They're going to take advantage though.
Oh yeah,
I think the way that they've structured it is solid, especially because you can always convert something to a bonus, or you can convert a bonus into salary if you really wanted to do that. It's just there are a million different tools that you have as a GM to kind of manipulate the cap, and I think that's why people freak out about a lot. Looking at your quarterback's contract can tell you a lot about what the GM at the time of signing that contract not only thought about the player, but also the direction of the team. Gutekunst adding a void year in 2023 tells you they don't believe he's going to be there, right? If he beats, if he plays that out, they're going to owe a lot of money to the cap, and they're going to owe a lot of money to him. And that's kind of why I don't see that relationship lasting much longer. Just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, you can kind of find subtle clues and hints here and there about, what's going on. Like Aaron Jones's deal is really a 2-year deal, even though I think they signed, what was it, a 5-year deal or something
like a 4-year, four-year extension. But yeah, I'm with you, and I'll let you continue. Yeah, why is it more of a 2-year deal for people that look at that and like, no, he signed 4 years.
I don't have it directly in front of me, but I mean, the guaranteed money dries up in year 2, right? So, I mean, if you want to keep him, you can keep him. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's say Aaron decides to stick around another year. Yeah, run it back, no problem. But after that, I mean, you can cut him without any kind of penalty, right? And so
in
this
fact, I'll
quote unquote 5-year deal where people are like, oh, I was like, oh, like he signed this long-term deal. Not really. I mean, sure, in theory, that's what the paper says. But I mean, after year 2, it's not worth the paper it's printed on until he shows up to camp and they're willing to pay him. So, I mean, it's very weird to kind of see how guaranteed money has kind of placed contract money in the sense of most contract money is for most players. I mean, obviously quarterbacks and other guys are different situations, but if you're not a star, like, contract money is kind of unlikely.
Yeah.
Get as much guaranteed money as you can.
Absolutely. Because teams, it's a business, nasty business. I mean, it's really kind of a crappy business when you think about a team giving a contract and then going, we're not going to honor that. But it's a business nonetheless. And yeah, like these contracts, that's why you talk about players only care about the guaranteed money. Your average, or even your great players. I mean, especially running backs, that position where teams don't typically want to pay for. And I've got Aaron Jones pulled up right here. It's after the 2022 season is when they can move on from him because, oh my gosh, there's so many ads on SpoTrack. Come on, guys. It's his cap hit in particular. It just skyrockets to over $19 million. And the dead cap is $6.5 million. I mean, you're able to move on from Jones, which that would be his age 29 season typically for running backs. And by that point, Aaron Jones, I know he catches a lot of passes, but he's been involved heavily with Green Bay. 2 years time, if he's still heavily involved in Green Bay, even if he's just catching passes, he's still getting tackled. And you're a 29-year-old running back. Nobody wants to pay $19 million to a running back. And yeah, no one really wants to pay $6.5 million on the cap for a player not there, but you're saving $13 million. And hey, look, like that's about the time AJ Dillon, they may start talking contract extension for him. Like teams recycle running backs all the time. So yeah, this is a perfect example, a very simple thing of like why, Aaron Jones signed a 4-year deal. But it's not really a 4-year deal. It's follow that guaranteed money.
Yep. The guaranteed money will tell you everything you need to know.
Yep. Absolutely. And really, I think on that note, man, honestly, I've seen, so for full transparency of people watching the show, they know if they've been watching weekly, this isn't my setup. I'm actually at work. I got an emergency phone call, but don't worry, I was able to get a podcast going. But I've been noticing that my phone has been blowing up on silent. And so I think I've been playing hooky from work enough times. So, man, I wanted to get into Nick Chubb, but honestly, covering the QBs, I think that's perfect. I think we hit the spot right there for us to end the podcast, if you're all right with that.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Well, for the Dynasty Wonderland, we appreciate you coming on the podcast here. We've got to, at some point, maybe if you look back at the recording, because Ryan's going to put these two parts together. If you like the product and the offer is always there to come back and join us, we can have that proper buy or sell game, because that was going to be talking about the GMs.
Oh, yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe we can get you back on a future podcast, because, man, like I'm telling you, it's story time for not just for me, not just for Ryan. And I feel bad for Ryan. Ryan didn't get the chance to have the guests. And I was like, well, who knows? Maybe I can bribe Anand to come back and join us.
Yeah. Probably during football season, honestly, is going to be a little bit easier. As kind of, everybody does their weekly stuff and kind of the GM coaching stuff and more of the salary cap stuff kind of fades out, other than, obviously players getting injured and cut and traded and stuff like that. Because, our big season really is, weirdly enough, is in the spring. So coming kind of as trading camp ends and, there aren't as many transactions flying around, it gets a little bit easier to free up some time. Granted, That was the old job. We'll see what the new job is. But, yeah, man. Great talking to you.
Yeah, and while I'm still recording here, it's gonna be fun for Ryan to edit this. He gets, I get to do the interview and have fun. He gets to do the work. But we'll see how he edits this. But we'll give a proper way of going off the air here. Anand, thank you so much for joining us. And for people that aren't, if you're somehow following me and you're not following Anand, I know I call myself the salary captain, but I'm kind of going through an identity crisis. I'm not really the captain. I mean, like, we got the salary guru here. Like, especially when Anand came into Roto Underworld, I'm like, man, I don't know who I am anymore. But check him out on Twitter at Nanduri NFL. That's NANDURI NFL. Remember to check them out on the Decision Point podcast on Roto Underworld Radio. Every episode's just pure gold. There's 2 episodes right now. I'm waiting for that third one. I was sad last week, but I know whenever the next one is, I'm going to be excited. I got my morning coffee. It's going to be great. So check them out on Twitter. And on that note, do you have any final words for the audience?
Nothing for anybody else, man. Aaron, you'll always be our salary captain in Roto Underworld, man. I'm not going to take your title. You're all good there. But yeah, if anybody's listening, if anybody's listening that hasn't checked out the Decision Point or any of Josh Larkey's work, because actually he's the one that kind of got me into Roto Underworld. The analytics stuff that he does is just incredible. I thought I worked hard in the analytics side of things, just kind of learning my little bit. But I mean, no harder worker than him. Matt, obviously the host, the pod father, does incredible work in his own right, and kind of brought us all together. So, just get ready, man. New football season's rapidly approaching. I know it's the preseason. I know everybody's excited about watching third stringers and backups, which, don't get me wrong, is a whole lot of fun, but man, it's a lot more fun when you got Patrick Mahomes out there and Tom Brady out there. So we're eagerly awaiting early September when we get to get everybody back out there and run the gauntlet again.